She spent 60 years turning herself into one of the most visible people on the planet. Rhinestones you could see from the back row, wigs built to be noticed, a laugh loud enough to fill any room she walked into. And when it came time to say goodbye, Dolly Parton asked for almost none of that. A small private service, immediate family only, no cameras, no red carpet, no farewell tour. The woman who spent her whole life giving the public a spectacle chose, for her own ending, something closer to silence. Here's everything that's actually been confirmed about how Dolly Parton is being laid to rest, and what the specific choices she made tell you about who she really was underneath all that glitter. Start with the request itself, because the wording matters. In the official statement released on August 25th, the day her death was announced, her family said plainly, at Dolly's request, a small private service will be held for immediate family. Notice that phrase, at Dolly's request. This wasn't a decision her family made for her after she was gone. This was something she asked for herself while she still could, the same way she'd apparently pre-recorded the video announcing her own death years in advance. Even in her final planning, she was still the one making the call about what the public did and didn't get to see. That pattern of pre-arrangement isn't new for her. By every account of the people closest to her, Dolly Parton spent decades treating her own affairs, business, music rights, and now, apparently, even the exact terms of her own funeral, with the same meticulous control she brought to a recording session. Almost nothing about how this has unfolded appears to have been left to chance, or to whoever happened to be standing nearest when the moment finally came. The location has real weight to it, because it isn't a random cemetery. According to TMZ's reporting, Parton will be buried at Woodlawn Memorial Park and Mausoleum in Nashville, and she will be laid to rest beside her husband, Carl Dean, who died in March 2025 after nearly 60 years of marriage. Woodlawn itself is one of Nashville's oldest and most established cemeteries, the kind of place where generations of the city's own families are buried alongside a handful of well-known names from country music history. It isn't a celebrity mausoleum built for spectacle, it's closer to a neighborhood resting place, which fits the pattern of everything else in these arrangements. Think about what that placement actually means beyond the location itself. For nearly 6 decades, Carl Dean was famous specifically for staying out of the public eye, a husband so private that most of Dolly's own fans could go a lifetime without ever seeing a photograph of the two of them together. He reportedly attended almost no public events with her, skipped award shows, skipped premieres, and by Dolly's own account over the years seemed to prefer paving driveways and staying home over almost any part of the spotlight that came with marrying one of the most famous women in America. In death, that pattern holds completely. They'll be next to each other, permanently, in a resting place that will almost certainly draw far less public attention than either of them experienced during Dolly's career. The privacy that defined their marriage in life appears to be following them into how they're memorialized, which in its own way might be the most honest tribute anyone could have arranged for that particular relationship. Then there are the details about what she'll actually be wearing, and this is the part of the story that sounds almost too on brand to be real, except multiple outlets have reported it independently. According to TMZ, Parton requested to be buried in her signature high heels, paired with a comfortable cotton dress. And according to the account her nephew Brian Seaver gave in the video announcing her death, she told him directly that she wanted to rest in what he described as a beautiful bed of plush cotton. His explanation for why is worth repeating close to word for word, because it's one of the more genuinely moving details to come out of any of this reporting. He said that after a life spent wearing heavy rhinestones, she finally deserves to be comfortable and have some rest. Read that against 60 years of elaborate costumes, towering wigs and stage outfits, built for spectacle rather than comfort, outfits she herself has joked for decades were more armor than clothing. Her final wardrobe request wasn't about being remembered as glamorous. It was about finally getting to put the costume down while still, notably, keeping the heels. Even in a request built entirely around comfort, she apparently wasn't willing to give up the one detail that had become as much a part of her identity as the wigs or the voice. It's a small thing, but it tells you something real about how completely she'd fused the performer and the person by the end of her life. The cause of death has been confirmed by this point, a brief battle with cancer, and she died surrounded by loved ones, according to her family's statement. What hasn't been shared, and by every indication won't be, is the specific type of cancer or a detailed medical timeline. That's consistent with everything else about how this family has handled the entire situation, giving the public exactly what they've decided to give, and drawing a firm line around everything else. It mirrors almost exactly the way Dolly herself handled her health in public during the final year of her life, offering real, true, specific details, kidney stones, dehydration, exhaustion, while never quite connecting those details to the fuller picture underneath them. The family's silence now reads less like evasion and more like a continuation of the exact same instinct she modelled for them the whole time she was still alive to model it. Here's where her instincts as a person show up even inside her own funeral arrangements, because the story doesn't end at the private service. Her family has explicitly asked that instead of sending flowers, fans and well-wishers, make donations to Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, the book gifting program she founded in 1995. That program exists because of her own father, Robert Lee Parton Sr., who couldn't read or write, something Parton has said publicly was, in her words, kind of crippling to him. She's spoken about watching that limitation shape and constrain her father's whole life, and about wanting to make sure no child in her home region grew up carrying that same weight. In the years since, Imagination Library has mailed more than 332 million free books to children across several countries, an operation that runs now largely independent of any single event or appearance from Dolly herself. Even in the instructions for how the public should grieve her, she redirected the attention away from herself and towards something that will keep running long after any funeral flowers would have wilted, a program built to outlast her by design rather than by accident. Her team has also given fans a specific way to participate from a distance, since the service itself is closed. Anyone wanting to pay tribute has been encouraged to tag her official accounts on social media or leave a message directly on her website, dollyparton.com. That's a deliberate structure, not an accident. It lets millions of people who loved her music have somewhere to put their grief, without requiring any of them to actually be present at a service that was never meant to include them in the first place. It's worth noticing how much thought appears to have gone into managing that gap, giving the public a place to grieve collectively online while keeping the actual physical goodbye small enough to remain genuinely private, rather than becoming another version of the spectacle her whole career had trained the world to expect from her. Go back to that image one more time. A woman who filled arenas for 6 decades, whose voice reached essentially every corner of the world, being laid to rest in a small private ceremony, in comfortable cotton, next to a husband. Most of the public never once saw her stand beside in public. It would be easy to read that as a contradiction, the ultimate performer choosing, at the very end, to have no audience at all. It's worth considering the other reading instead, the one that fits everything else we now know about how deliberately she managed her own story right up until the final year of her life. The rhinestones were always for us, the plush cotton, the private service, the space beside Carl. That part was always going to be hers alone. She spent 60 years giving the public everything they wanted to see, timed and staged and delivered with the same precision she brought to every song she ever wrote. Her funeral is the one part of the story she kept exactly the way she wanted it, for herself and for no one else, which might be the last and quietest lesson of a career built almost entirely on knowing exactly what to give away and exactly what to keep.